See a blonde-haired boy, he be playing in the fields, and his daddy lifts him up on his steering wheel. He says one day, son,
living up to the expectations of others. It's not something anyone should have to experience, but it is something that happens in the world. It may be the expectation of taking over a family business, or being forced to follow a certain route imposed on you by others. It may even be living in the shadow of another, and this sadly is the situation that Francis Vendetti finds himself experiencing in The Artful Escape. Developed by Beethoven Dinosaur and published by Annapurna Interactive, The Artful Escape follows the aforementioned Francis Vendetti, living in the fictional mountainous town of Calypso, Colorado. We see Francis overlooking the picturesque town, struggling to play folk music. From here, he meets a futuristic looking stranger named Violetta. Her and Francis begin talking, and we soon learn that Francis is the nephew of the folk music legend Johnson Vendetti. Johnson is regarded as one of the best folk musicians to have ever existed, and is from Calypso, meaning that naturally the people of the town hold Johnson on a very, very high pedestal. This year just so happens to be the 20th anniversary of Johnson's breakthrough album, and Calypso are celebrating this with a massive festival. The cherry on the top is that Francis is going to be performing on stage for the first time during this festival. Francis and Violetta begin talking about Francis's music, and we learn that Francis doesn't like playing folk music. He wants to play his style of music, which is essentially a mixture of rock and synth. That night, Francis is visited by an alien creature, and from there is whisked away across the galaxy. What follows is a story of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and learning to walk your own paths away from the shadows of expectations. The deep narrative is set against the backdrop of what can only be described as a wild, almost acid-induced environment of bright, psychedelic colours spanning almost every corner of the galaxy. The gameplay of The Artful Escape is extremely simple. Movement in the game happens on a 2D plane, with Francis moving across the screen in a side-scrolling manner. The game does feature some platforming, but this is a very rough description of it. The game features platforms and ledges that must be jumped onto, or gaps that must be cleared. Francis is eventually able to double jump in order to clear some of the larger gaps the game presents. There are dialogue choices in the game, and for the most part they are seemingly inconsequential. Some, though, are directly related to the persona that Francis is creating for his onstage presence. You get to choose his clothes, his name, and even certain parts of his backstory. While this doesn't seem to affect the ending of the game at all, it is nice in helping the player to feel central to the story of Francis's self-acceptance. But arguably the most interesting of the Artful Escape's gameplay comes from Francis's guitar. While running through the environments, the player can hold X to have Francis play the guitar. As he shreds the guitar, parts of the environment will change. Lights will turn on, flowers will bloom, and animals will act in new ways. It's as if Francis' music is literally changing the world around him. You can also use the guitar to interact with key parts of the environment. Some gaps are very large, but pressing X makes Francis do a rockstar jump or pose that increases the distance of your jump. You can also press the Y button while jumping to slam your guitar into the floor. This is used to interact with certain platforms and progress the story forward. A massive part of the game, though, is the jam sessions, which are essentially just very short games of Simon Says. Something in the environment will show the symbol that means a jam is about to happen. It may be a creature or a plant, but something will bear the symbol of the jam. From here, the game of Simon Says begins, and the player is tasked with matching the colours shown by the symbol. Each colour represents a button on the Xbox controller: X, Y, B, LB or RB. Sometimes 2 or 3 colours may be shown, but you are essentially recreating the pattern in order to make music. You can play the notes as they appear, and there is nothing stopping you doing that, but I personally waited until the pattern was finished to play my tune. I found that pressing the buttons as they appeared led to Francis' music overlapping with the creature's music and was just very unpleasant to listen to. Finally, we need to discuss the visual and audio aspects of the Artful Escape. Visually, this game is batshit crazy, but honestly in a beautiful way. The game features crazy colour palettes, each of which made me feel like I was experiencing a visual representation of a Hendrix or a Cream album. It's almost this psychedelic rock mixed with synth and just a sprinkle of Ziggy Stardust, which makes sense as Johnny Galvatron, the director of The Artful Escape, cited Bowie as a direct influence for the game. It's very hard to explain the visuals of the game with words, and so I'm hoping that the gameplay you have seen has given you a good idea of what to expect. In terms of the audio aspects of the game, I cannot fault it whatsoever. The voice acting is amazing, the music is brilliant. Francis Vendetti's appearance and music style is very clearly based on Bob Dylan, and there's nothing wrong with that. The music that Francis creates sounds awesome, and is very clearly of a better quality than the folk music we see him attempt to create in the beginning of the game. Again, something that echoes Francis's discontentment towards living in the shadow of his folk legend uncle. But when Francis steps out from Johnson's shadow and walks his own path, the music is amazing. And honestly, that's exactly what The Artful Escape is about. The importance of living one's life as they wish to live it. About casting the expectations of others aside and living your life the way that you want to. When Francis begins to explore the idea of playing the music he wants to play, the world becomes a wild, beautiful place. I think that the message The Artful Escape wants to pass on is that you see the true beauty of the world when you do what makes you happy. When you live your life the way that you want to. I played The Artful Escape just before it leaves Game Pass, and I massively regret leaving it for as long as I did. I cannot recommend this game enough to you. It's available on PC, Xbox One, the Xbox Series X and S, PS4 and PS5. At the time of recording, cost between £15 and £17, which, if you ask me, is an absolute bargain.